terrorists have enough funding since the CFA is manufactured by France, and France has the support of the European Union to manufacture as many CFA as it wants, as long as it is not euros or dollars. The CFA, which is the African country that manufactures the CFA, which has the board dressed, is France. So it's to tell you, the funding that these terrorist movements benefit from is a major change between what happened during the fall regime and what has been happening since June 26, 2023. In addition to the funding, there is the acquisition of the material.
Hey guys, as you're watching this video, our vision is to reach 500,000 subscribers. Hit the subscribe button, join membership to support our channel, join Patreon and PayPal. All the links are in the description. Do that to stand with us for this beautiful cause of One Africa right now. We do not forget to sign up for the petition. The link is down below. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Président, merci de nous accorder cet entretien exclusif qui sera, si vous le permettez bien.
Mr. President, thank you for granting us this exclusive interview, which will be, if you allow it, essentially devoted to the security issue. This is the result of the observation of a certain number of declarations and adjustments in the direction of a real security tension or undermining, maintained in a logic of programmed chaos in Niger and in our AES space by Western powers. As we now all know, sponsors of terrorism in the Sahel and in some African governments. Mr. President, I would like to ask you a very simple question. What is really happening on the security level? Because Nigerians have the impression at first, in any case, that the geopolitical aspects related to security have largely evolved in favor of our country and our AES confederation. It remains only the operational aspects on the ground, which are in fact taken care of by our FDS and the AES armies in general. We have the impression that the French and their allies seem to have understood that now we, Nigerians, have taken our destiny in our hands, and that our dignity and our sovereignty will never be trampled on in our country, that they must therefore change their attitude and approach towards us. We have the impression that they seem to have understood that a war against the great Nigerian people will result in a total failure. Consequently, they have well integrated this fact and that the military intervention is far behind us. Finally, we have the impression that the CDAO seems to have well integrated that the exit of the countries of the AES Confederation from their community is a departure with immediate effect and that it is irreversible. So what is happening, Mr. President, in relation to all these questions raised?
Merci de l'opportunité une fois de plus à nous offerte pour nous adresser au peuple nigérien et de façon plus globale au peuple de la Confédération.
Hello. Thank you for the opportunity once again offered to us to address the Nigerian people and, more globally, the people of the Confederation. Let us first have a particular thought towards our defense and security forces which are making the ultimate sacrifice to keep our country free, our country independent from now on. Let us be compassionate towards our civilian brothers, victims as well as terrorism, as well as our defense and security forces. Let us give thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has been able to preserve the Nigerian people and spread His mercy on the whole of our country. You said it, we have the impression, we have the feeling, it is quite right. It is right since Nigeria has dared for the first time since 26 July 2023 to say that it fully assumes the security of its territory. Unfortunately, the opponent we have in front of us is not terrorism. It is especially France. France is used to having everything in Niger. France is used to having human and natural resources in Niger, as it pleases through agreements that we all know the conditions in which our past leaders were forced to sign. But unfortunately, the West continues to look at Niger, and beyond Niger, the whole of Africa, under the prism of 1800 to 1960 for some, for others a little earlier, 1958, 1948. This prism is a prism of contempt, of non-right, where the colonial power thinks it has a right to life, or death on the colonized people. Niger has gone through several stages, in particular with the mission that we call recognition in military terms, which others naively call explorers, ethnologists of this, of that. And that started with Mungo Park in 1805, which crosses Niger and which will find death. If you remember, in Buza in February 1806. After him, it is the English, including a certain Denham and Calipatone, who will cross our territory in 1822. We arrive in 1850 with Henri Bart in 1850, who will leave Tripoli and arrive in Agadez precisely on October 1. He will stay in Agadez until October 30th before leaving. After that, there are other missionaries. In particular, you remember the famous Montreuil Square. But before Montreuil, there were Decker, there was Beau, there was another one called Vergos. There was Tute, there was Horst. 614. All these are precursors, messengers. They listed the African people, they listed our customs, and through that they built a roadmap that will serve as the basis for the colonization of Africa, in any case for those who concern Niger, with the sadly famous colonnade of Voulay-Chalouin in 1898, and which will make between Dogondous and Ogni, remember well, more than 12,000 dead. Captain Paul Voulay and his physician nurse, I don't remember, Chanon. 659, more than 12,000 dead between Dogondous and Ogni. Women and children hanging, running, alive and hanging, so as to stay alive at the moment when they were devoured by hyenas.
Qui traverse le Niger et qui va trouver la mort, si vous vous rappelez, à Boussa en février.
This is what we have known here in Niger, and it is the footprint under which France has continued to consider us until July 25th, 2023. I say July 25th because from July 26th things will change. For France, before July 26th, no Nigerian has the right. The Nigerian nation is a republic, it must be said, considered as a banana republic that deserves nothing more than contempt or resources. Since we are bananas, we do not know the interest or the economic importance of our resources, where our uranium was considered to have less value than clay. You remember clay? Where our uranium was related to our GDP, less currency than the violet of Galmi. It is this situation in which we have said, stop that. Created, I will not say the word, because no word will be as strong to qualify. The reaction of Macron and his French and Nigerian spies, of course, where we were predicted the sky that will fall on our heads. Where we were predicted a country that will collapse in less than 2 weeks. Where we were predicted a country that if it lasts a little longer, it is a month. Where we were predicted a country that cannot survive without humanitarian aid. Without the humanitarian aid that we have denied. And unfortunately, we regret to note that the logic, followed by France, is accompanied by the other countries of the European Union, that do not take distance to analyze the facts and restore justice. But we are determined, and it is in this sense that our army, our forces of defense and security will rise in power to prove that our security is our responsibility, and this responsibility is a duty towards the Nigerian people, and we will assume it with full responsibility. This is what I can say in relation to this first part. The second part is indeed always the events of the 26th that have raised a lot of waves, but we know where our country is going, and we know that if we remain cross-armed, our country will no longer exist, and this is why the forces of defense and security decided to assume and say that it is the blood of the Nigerians that will be shed for Nigeria. No Frenchman, even a simple economy in the Rhine, lost his life during the 12 or 13 years that they spent in Nigeria. Not even a single bicycle of the French army jumped on an improvised explosive machine. But how could it have been otherwise, since it is themselves who bury them with their supplies? So we are aware of that, and we are aware of our responsibilities. We will do everything so that our forces of defense and security are able to assume this. Responsibility with all dignity and with all sovereignty. Mr. President, you mentioned the rise in power of our FDS. How does this translate concretely? I have just said it. The forces of defense and security have made enormous sacrifices. It is our responsibility in the face of the situation and in the face of the genocide planned by France and its acolytes that we make all the arrangements to put our forces of defense and security in the best conditions. But to put these forces in the best conditions, we must have them. And that is why the first step consisted in mobilizing, recruiting intensely in the ranks of the forces of defense and security. In a year of existence, the National Council for the Preservation of the Fatherland recruited more than 25,000 men. whether it is within the Nigerian armed forces, whether it is within the national gendarmerie, whether it is within the National Guard, whether it is within the national police, we recruited more than 25,000 men. The 25,000 men raised, or for some we see raised, especially for those concerned with the forces of protection and development. It was necessary to put a minimum of less material at their disposal. And to do this, what we have spent is more than 150 billion francs CFA to equip, on the one hand, and pay the arriérés that we found on the material that the regime had taken on credit. I say it and I repeat it, and that we are. By duty and by continuity of the Republic, we have been able to erase the ardoises. And we did it, but know that it is not easy. It is not at all easy in a country where, hold on tight, the simple Toyotas are forbidden to be sold to Nigeria. And that is France, accompanied by certain Western powers, who expressly asked us not to sell to Nigeria a guillotine that could shoot a terrorist. And it is these same countries that come to tell us about rights, legitimacy, protection. And all this tapestry that you see is in this sense. But in addition to raising it and acquiring the material, we have also focused on training, because we know that for a soldier, training saves blood. And in relation to that, we have made the arrangements so that our soldiers, our defense and security forces, benefit from the most accurate training wherever possible. Whether it is outside, with our strategic partners, whether it is inside, by always calling sometimes even certain strategic partners who come to train us, the personnel, so that they are at the height of accomplishing their mission. This is what we do. This is what we have done to realize the rise in power of our defense and security forces. Mr. President, it seems to me that you put a link between terrorism in the Sahel before and after the takeover of power by the CNSP. What is it really? That is to say that there is a change of actors, of means and of terrorist strategies. There is not only me who says that there is a change. All Nigerians see what we are facing. Before the 26th of July, terrorism and the Nigerian authorities formed a single person. It was not me who said it. You are on the national territory. You follow the interventions of one and the other. And you know what was going on before the 26th of July 2023. Terrorists, it was not me who said it. 1638. President Dekes had himself officially, in Mahatma Gandhi, the conference center, announced that he is a friend of terrorists. He received several times terrorists at the presidential palace. He freed terrorists, but we know that they did more than that. Refer to the statement of the ex-Minister of the Interior, Mr. Hamasula, to Abala Filinga. You will understand that they did more than that. He said it himself. They did more than that, but unfortunately, the terrorists on their side, according to him, did not respect their commitments. What are these commitments? We have never gone out to tell the Nigerian people. These are the commitments that we have honored vis-à-vis terrorists. We know what these commitments are that have been honored vis-à-vis terrorists. And it's not a surprise, because these authorities acted under the injunction of France. This same France, I say it and I repeat it, which finances terrorism in the Sahel. This poured several billion francs into the Lac Chad bed, into the hands of Boko Haram al-Bakura, the Islamic State in the provinces of West Africa, under the orders of a certain Abu Musa al-Barnawi, 1828, at the level of Sokoto, in Nigeria, from Sokoto, Zamfara, Kebbi, inside Benin, and in the region of Tamu, Torodi, and a little further. The billions of dollars that are in possession of these terrorist movements and their local sponsors, of course, exceed all that you can imagine being available in the reserves of Central Africa, which uses the CFA, of course, and of the West African Monetary Union. Terrorists have enough funding since the CFA is manufactured by France, and France has the support of the European Union to manufacture as many CFA as it wants, as long as it is not euros or dollars. The CFA, which is the African country that manufactures the CFA, which has the board dressed, is France. So it's to tell you, the funding that these terrorist movements benefit from is a major change between what happened during the fall regime and what has been happening since June 26, 2023. In addition to the funding, there is the acquisition of the material. The acquisition of the material, whether it is also in the Lake Chad bed, whether it is in the region of Sokoto, whether it is in northern Benin, especially in the W Park, the region of Porga, whether it is in the Pendjari also, which is another forest always inside Benin, but this time frontally with Togo, whether it is here within our Nigerian territory, whether it is within the Burkina Faso territory. And people are designated and are the focal points of terrorists, who ensure the formation of terrorists internationally. There are terrorist training centers in a country in Central Africa. There are terrorist training centers within the W side of Benin, by the French Special Forces, which are in Porga. You walk 315 degrees over 2 kilometers, all the more you will fall on their position from Porga, whether it is in the Pendjari. The Nigerian authorities are aware. I see a whole storm in a glass of water. But we must rather recognize our mistakes and avoid playing the game of the ostrich, which hides its head when it sees the danger, forgetting that the head is only 1/100th of its body. In Nigeria, I say it so that it does not subject to any possible interpretation. Ahmed Abu Bakr Rufai, who was responsible for the GDSE era, which they called National Intelligence Agency, which was recently replaced in August, was the focal point for the training, the acquisition, the financing of terrorism, the acquisition of the material. In Benin, the Minister of the Interior. He just has to answer the question at the end of September. The command of more than 100 drones that they launched. Through another national, more than 100 drones in China, the DJI Matrix Thermal type. Zoom 1200 to 1500 meters, range 15 to 30 kilometers according to the signal. He just has to answer, where are these materials? It's not for profit. And it's military option drones with night vision. This material was distributed to terrorists who are in the Sokoto, the Zamfara, the Kebbi, terrorists who are in the W, in collaboration with the French Special Forces, terrorists who are in our gourmet zone, and certainly in Burkina and further in Mali. Since we have followed the distribution, and these individuals just have to answer their people about the destination of this commanded material that we are ready to prove if necessary. But I have mentioned their names so that no one thinks that what we say is just to take away our responsibilities. We are not used to taking away our responsibilities. We will assume our responsibilities. So these terrorists currently benefit from material support, financial support, and support in training on the part of France, with of course the benevolence of other Western powers, because they just have to tell France to stop. I am sure that France will stop. But since they are accomplices and that Niger deserves a correction, it is of course necessary to the terrorists so that in the end, Nigeria falls and that we prove to the world, to Africa and to Nigerians in particular, that we are not worthy of any self-determination, we are not worthy of assuming ourselves, and that we are only incapable. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with the verdict, and inshallah they will fail. It is still serious what is happening. But what is in the details of this destabilization strategy so that Nigerians and the whole world understand what it is about? The destabilization strategy is simple. It consists in the first place, as I said, to finance, to equip, to train and to position terrorist movements along the border of the Confederation, not only of Niger, but of the Confederation, because the objective is the dislocation of the Confederation. In this sense, what did they do? The French, with, of course, the support of the European Union, which remains despite the evidence, attached to the murderous and crazy policy of the French authorities. The French already positioned on the 25th, I say the 25th, the night of the 25th to the 26th of October, 2023, material in the basin of Lake Chad. At the time when it receded, when it disengaged from Niger, passing of course by the terrestrial route that links us with the Republic on the Chad River. They contacted the terrorists. They offered them the terrorists of the Clan Bakura wing with Abu Umaima as their leader, and the terrorists of the ISWAP wing with Abu Musa al-Barnawi as a leader. They offered them the financing, the training, the equipment, provided that these movements accept to go to war against the Republic of Niger, provided that these movements accept the French troops to occupy the basin of Lake Chad, certain islands that we know, but that we will name for obvious reasons. They made this proposal to the two wings of the former Boko Haram of Youssef Mohammed, if you remember, when they made the proposal, the night of the 25th to the 26th October, 2023. The Bakura wing was more conciliatory. The ISWAP wing had openly said that it was not ready to go with the French to attack any Muslim country. Their fight is for Islam, according to them. But Islam, we do not learn Islam in Niger. The 6th Caliphate, Islam was introduced in Niger. To tell you, the strategy used by France is not the first contact. They continued and kept in constant contact with these terrorist movements. They left to create the Lakurawa movement. This Lakurawa movement, which has made a lot of anchors burn. 2903. But we have, as I said, God is with the truthful. We have had, through special operations, led to the arrest of terrorist leaders, who have declared to us everything that I have just told you and that I want to tell you. The French, by approaching them in the bed of Lake Chad, with Nigerian officials, including the one I spoke to, Ahmed Abu Bakr, the former head of the NIA agency. The French offered them to open a base in the Sokoto region, a base that they baptized Gaba, in a wooded environment in the region.
This is the journey to one Africa.